This episode of the Gooner Ramble podcast is sponsored by the new app called Bookie. That's BOOKEE. Sign up by using the promo code Ramble, deposit and bet £10 and get a free £10 bet. That's Bookie, BOOKEE.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Gooner Ramble podcast. I'm your host Giles, and joining me tonight are regulars Akhil at 10 Akhil. How you doing, mate? You right?
Got there in the end, yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you. And also we've got Dave Seeger at Gooner Dave 66. Evening, Dave.
Evening, gentlemen.
Good stuff. Right, let's crack on, get on to it. Brighton of Albion, 2-0 result. A functional routine win. A lot of people have said. September, we've played 7 games in all, won 6, drawn 1. In Premier League, we've played 4, won 3, drawn 1, scored 7, conceded 0. Akhil, start with you. You were there.
Yeah.
What did you make of the victory and the performance, I say, really?
I mean, we started well. I thought the first 15-20 we looked like, we were really on top, and it was weird actually for me because I sat with someone else just for a bit of a change. I sat in the upper tier, and you get such a different view there. And some of our football looked really good from up there. I don't know if it always looks like that or if it was just Sunday. But we kind of just didn't really kill the game off. I don't think we had maybe enough clear-cut chances, but I always felt we were in control. Yeah, Brighton hit the post as did we, and they had a couple of set pieces, but all in all, I don't think we really got out of kind of second gear, and I think a lot of games have been like that. I mean, West Brom was very similar, even Bournemouth, I think if we really wanted it, we could have got 4 or 5, but at the end of the day, we're keeping clean sheets again, we're scoring goals, we're winning games, and as you rightly point out, we've won 6 out of 7, and that 7 was a draw away to Chelsea, which, it was a good point for us. So it's 7 positive results.
Dave, were you there as well?
No, I had to miss the weekend because my elderly mother was staying with me for the weekend. So if I'd left her with my wife, I would have been in serious trouble. But I did watch the game on television. So.
What did you make of it?
I agree with Akhil. I mean, it was frustrating to watch at times. It wasn't comfortable in victory. It was never that pretty to watch, and it was always a little bit frustrating because you just felt with that little bit of magic dust or that little bit of creativity, it could have been a completely different scoreline. And the reason I found it frustrating is because if you do look above us in the table, okay, you can say, 7 good results, 7 scored without conceding, but compared to what's happening above us, that is not good enough, is it? The other teams that are scoring 4 and 5 every week. So this was an opportunity really to sort of try and claw back some of that difference and increase our goal difference, which I think we failed to take, unfortunately. But let's be positive. We did win, and it is another clean sheet.
Tell me, what did you make of whose individual performances stood out to you, Dave, or for you?
Nacho was at a different level entirely. I thought he was just absolutely fantastic. I really, I was very, very pleased.
It's probably 2 in a row for Nacho, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, literally, he's just exceptional at the moment, and there's no way he's not going to be in that position for as long as we stay with 3 at the back. In fact, I would go as far as say is, Koscielny, if fit, plays and Nacho plays, the other position is the one that's up for grabs. Until, unless Mustafi starts turning in consistent performances, which I think he's capable of. But at the moment, that's the third position. But Nacho was just sensational. I thought Xhaka was hit and miss again, which I think is a shame. We need to see some consistency from him. He seems to want to sort of pass the Hollywood ball a lot of the time when it's not required, and when it is required, he doesn't hit it. Lacazette was making, watching it on telly is a bit different than seeing it where I normally sit, close to the pitch, same as Akhil. I don't get that perspective, but Lacazette was making run after run after run.
Yeah.
And Xhaka and Ramsey weren't seeing it. And sometimes it's all very well saying the 2 players. I mean, Alexis was seeing it potentially. I don't think there's a chemistry there yet, but that might come. But I think sometimes the ball's got to be hit from a bit deeper, and Ramsey and Xhaka weren't seeing those runs and weren't hitting the balls when they were there to be hit, and then seemed to be trying to hit the balls when Lacazette wasn't making the runs. It was a very frustrating performance. But, certainly for me, Nacho was fantastic. He was head and shoulders, and Kolasinac as well. They're probably the two that stood out for me.
Well, actually, you were there. I'll give the same question to you. Who stood out for you?
Yeah, same. I mean, Nacho seems to have recovered well from the start of the season, where he was obviously playing in that central position as in the three, and it was an unfair position. I feel he's a left back who can play kind of as part of a three on the left, but to play him centrally was tough on him. But I think he's recovered really well. I mean, like Dave, it is interesting. So I think Nacho definitely plays. I think obviously Koscielny plays, but Koscielny, can he play in the centre of the three? Because he's played predominantly on that right of the three with Mustafi deeper, and so you think if Mustafi doesn't play, then does Koscielny move back in and maybe Holding plays on the right, or does someone like is Per better suited to it? I just think Mustafi's place, it's a little bit easier for him to keep, purely because maybe the others are more suited to the left, as Monreal is, or the right as Koscielny is. But it'll be interesting. So I thought Monreal looked good. Kolasinac has really impressed. He's just an absolute beast, isn't he? I think kind of quietly Hector Bellerin's getting back as well. I think he's not done anything outstanding as such. But I think, getting rid of Oxlade-Chamberlain just means that Bellerin knows that he's got his position back. He's safe there, and I think he's gone under the radar a little bit. But he's kind of just starting to kind of rack up those fantasy football points, I guess. But he's starting to just turn the performances. So
Alexis was very good as well, wasn't he?
I want to ask you both about Alexis, because some people were saying that his attitude left a lot to be desired on Sunday. I mean, Akhil, you were there. What did you think of his general demeanor?
Yeah, no, I can't really accept that, because I just think those people that are saying that are looking for something, because he's obviously wanted to go to Man City. We know he's running his contract down. I think it's the easy way. It's the easy thing to say, but I think he's always been like that. I think even in his first season, not as much, because maybe he didn't know England, he didn't know Arsenal, he didn't know his players, so he couldn't just start waving his arms around without actually having anything. But as soon as he was established at Arsenal and then started scoring goals, getting assists, I think he's always been like that. It just the difference was he had 2 years or 3 years left on his contract, so no one really cared too much and looked into it too deeply. But at the moment, every single thing is being analysed. I mean, since probably Bournemouth away last year, the media are obsessed with Alexis Sanchez's kind of gestures and his kind of mood, and maybe as our fans. So, yeah, I don't really, I just think that's him. I just think, even at Barcelona, he was like that. At Chile, he's also like that. Even in the Copa Americas that they won. So I think winning or losing, Alexis is just Alexis. And, he's not happy with the 4-0 win because he wants a fifth. He's not happy with the 5-0 because he wants a sixth, and that's just how he is.
Dave, I tend to agree.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think, like in the last time I was on after the Europa League game, he definitely, that was annoying me. I think the thing is, it was annoying me, and it was obvious to me for one reason. He wasn't playing well. And if you're not playing well, stop shouting at your teammates. I think I can accept it because he's a world-class player, and when he's playing well, and he gets frustrating his teammates, then I can accept it. So I think we're looking at two different arguments, really. I mean, I think that the previous few weeks he wasn't playing that well and he was doing it, and it upset me. This weekend he played exceptionally well and he was doing it. I don't even bother me. And it's literally that simple. I don't think if you're that good and you're frustrating your teammates when you're playing at your best, no problem with that. But when you're not playing your best and you do it, I do have a problem with it.
The thing is, he was starting late, wasn't he? He was starting the season a little bit later.
Yeah. But what Dave said, there is a trend there. He does it when he's playing well, does it when he's playing bad. So actually, does he just do it all the time?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not saying he doesn't, but I'm just saying sometimes it bothers you more because it's not just.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I wanted to talk about quickly the goal. I mean, like you both said, it was quite laboured for most of the game. The second half, things picked up. Nacho scored a good goal in picked up the ball and scored a goal in the area. But the second goal really was a really good description or display of for want of a better word, Wenger ball, but we moved the ball really quickly. There were lots of triangles. Guys were moving around and, non-stop running. And then obviously Alexis's vision to pick out, Iwobi with that back heel was brilliant. I mean, from that point on, I think there was a point earlier on actually when I think it was Ramsey who got in the area and then it struck the keeper. I think there was another good build up, like one touch build up.
Yeah, I think Ramsey had two like that.
Yeah. I mean, it was frustrating to watch, but there were moments, weren't there, Akhil, where the passing really was lucid, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what I meant at the start, but I don't know if it was just this week or if it's all the time. But I mean, sitting in the upper tier, I really got a different view, and I actually enjoyed the first 20 minutes.
And Dave, I mean, first opening minute, Lacazette hits the post.
Yeah.
I think if he just scored that might have changed the outlook and the course of the game, because, even though Bournemouth went one down, they were still quite tight, they were compact. It's only when we opened up with that second goal.
Brighton.
Brighton, sorry.
No, they didn't. I mean, I thought that would have been spectacular, but we did score quite early, and you thought that would have settled us down, and you sort of thought Brighton would have to come out and try and get something from the game, which they didn't really do so much in the first half. They did later on in the game, but you did hope the game was going to open up for us a bit, and it didn't. So, we were trying to pass through 8 or 9 organised players, and Chris Hughton's a defender. He's a good defensive manager, and I thought his team set up very well, and it was difficult. But yes, there were times when we did display that quick passing. I just think it probably highlights, when whilst we're functional without Ozil or without a Wilshere type player, and we will grind out results, no doubt about it. The difference between the 1 or 2-0 and the 3 or 4-0 against a defensive side, as we've seen with what Man United are doing, because don't get me wrong, Man United haven't played anybody yet, but they're beating the nobodies 4 or 5, as are Man City, and that's the difference, isn't it? It's that creative spark to sort of to unlock a packed, well organised defence, and that's the debate, between perhaps an Iwobi and an Ozil, or between a Ramsey and a Wilshere, or a Xhaka and a Wilshere, and that's why that debate will rumble on. But whilst we're still winning, I should imagine Wenger's going to find it quite hard to change the side.
Iwobi had a really good game, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And that
was no gimme. No gimme, that
yeah.
goal. I mean, that was well taken, finish, well taken.
Do you, I mean, we know what he's good at, don't we? I mean, he's good at carrying the ball forward. He likes getting involved in the quick passing and whatnot. He's quite incisive sometimes with his passing. But Wenger's challenged him now to be scoring more and assisting more. Do you expect?
I think he's also improved his strength. Holding players off as well.
Absolutely. And like I was saying in the Chelsea game, although he made no stats-wise, his defensive contribution didn't say anything, but where he was positioned, whether it was obviously it was instructional, but where he was positioned, really cut off the passing lanes down Chelsea's left. And I think we're seeing that more now, that he's taking instruction, he's executing the process, and it's showing, and it's benefiting us both in an attacking and a defensive sense. I mean, pressing up high, he's really good at it. Defending again when we're right of possession, he's getting better at it. Do you think this is a season now where we can be expecting more output from him, Dave?
Oh, I certainly hope so. I mean, I've been a fan from day one when he first started playing in the Ozil role in the cup run 2 years ago. I remember a game, I think it was Sunderland. He was fantastic, and I thought, wow, now this guy. Because I think through the youth, he played wide a lot, and we saw him utilised in that 10 role when we were still playing the 4-2-3-1. And I thought, wow, this guy's got, this guy's got an eye for a pass. He's got a quick feet. And I got very excited, and I think I am still excited. But he was overused a bit, as young players quite often. I think he got a little bit tired last year. Perhaps he thought he'd arrived. I don't know. I don't know the guy. So maybe that's mentally or subconsciously he thought he was already established, and maybe he went off the boil a bit. But right now, he's playing like he's fighting to be in the team every week. He seems to be able to last 90 minutes, which he didn't for the first year and a half. He seemed to come off periodically. Every single game he was substituted, but he substituted not because of it was 70 minutes and Wenger made the substitution. He was substituted because he was blown out of his arse, to use an old phrase. He just didn't look like he could last 90 minutes. He also looked like he was carrying a bit, maybe an extra weight, which he's lost. I think everything's going for him. And, why not? Why not one of our own step up to become that player? Would be lovely to see. Lovely to see.
Ax, what about you? I mean, are you expecting more? Do you understand why Wenger's challenging him?
Yeah, I mean, I think was it Wenger kind of challenged him to get into double figures and in terms of goals and get assists, because in that position you need to, and in this new formation with the extra centre back, your two behind the front man are even more important. You do need 10 to 15 goals from them, otherwise there just isn't going to be enough goals, as you probably need goals from one of your central midfielders too. So yeah, I mean, Iwobi does. I mean, it was funny actually, because about 10 seconds before the goal, I kind of said, this is where he's really good, and this was when he was outside the area. It's when he gets in that area is when it all goes wrong. And actually, he obviously proved me wrong there. But
he had two very tame efforts earlier on.
He
was through one-on-one.
I mean, even with the goal, I know you said it was a good finish, but it was actually, if the keeper had stood up, that was straight at him sort of thing. It was the power maybe that kind of surprised him a little bit. But I think Iwobi does have to work on his end product a lot. I think he's brilliant at that, carrying the ball and things like that. But I mean, obviously, I think that Chelsea game has given Wenger so much optimism with sort of the Iwobi and Welbeck type of roles and the way they play, that I think Iwobi will get his chance, and I think he will get his chance in big games too, because I think, there's been a lot of talk on social media today about Mesut Ozil being kind of phased out a little bit, and you can kind of see that happening.
It's definitely an opportunity for him to sort of, especially going beyond the Ozil years, looking out after Ozil's time has passed. This is an opportunity for him to sort of stake a claim for that role. Interesting.
Save us 50 million quid.
Maybe, you never know. Well, yeah, we can use that 50 million to get to add on to the other 60 that we need to get for Alexis replacement. Iwobi, Dave, you said in going through the age groups, he had a really good scoring record and whatnot. And I just really quickly, I just wanted to say that watching him score that goal, I noticed that he does like to side foot it. He likes to side foot, where it's obviously when you side foot with your instep, you control the ball better than whether you do it with with the outside of your boot or through the laces or whatever. And I just wonder if it's a confidence thing. Maybe he just thought, didn't we just get it on target anyhow, anyway, and and hope for the best rather than I just think that if there's not enough confidence in his ability to finish at the moment, which he did have when he was going up through the age groups. And I just hope we see more of that now. We see more of that confidence coming through, because he's definitely got the ability, like you said, Dave. I mean, he was scoring for fun, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it's just you've got to be in those positions. It's like Welbeck in the first few games of the season. He scored a few goals, he missed more, and people are getting frustrated. I would be getting more frustrated with Welbeck and Iwobi if they weren't getting in positions to score the goals. The fact is, Iwobi had two clear-cut chances before he scored the third chance. That's fantastic for a player in his position to be getting in those positions. And if he's still playing week in, week out, the more often he gets in those positions, the more confident he's going to get, the more he's going to get. And that would happen with Welbeck if he was playing every week. I don't buy into this. They haven't got the ability. I know a lot of people, would just say, well, Ozil should be playing because he's a world-class player. But that may be the case. But I think with Welbeck and Iwobi, I just like the fact they're always getting in the positions. The scoring goals regularly will come if they keep getting in the positions, I'm sure of it.
And Laka also, some people said that, I thought his running off the ball was brilliant. Like you said, we just need people to look up and find him and be confident enough to give him the ball. I'm sure, as I said last week, Xhaka sees the picture. He's just not, I don't think he's got that rapport yet with him, or that confidence in Lacazette to play the pass, but he definitely, he makes so many runs, it's unbelievable.
Alexis and Lacazette, there isn't a chemistry there either, and that will come. Because at the end of last season, when Alexis was playing that sort of a second 10 role, for the last, 8 weeks of the season, his assist tally was going up through the notches, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure when he starts to pick Lacazette's runs and there's more of an understanding, I'm sure that will definitely come as well.
I wanted to quickly talk about the Ozil, and obviously you guys must have seen it was everywhere on plastered around social media today, that Man United are going to make a push for him in January to sign a new contract. But I think it was said that, I think Sammy Mockbell, was it, Akhil, said that Arsenal are willing to listen to offers for him to go in January. Yeah. You know Sammy quite well. And what do you think? What did you make of that story?
I think it's pretty obvious. Well, it makes sense, I guess. I mean, Mesut had a good pre-season in terms of he was there. He played in the opening few games, and then we haven't really seen him again. You know, he kind of got injured, and then we saw him for 7 minutes against West Brom, and there's a little bit of where the hell is Mesut Ozil right now? Because it does feel a little bit like that, and I don't know. I think a lot changed in that Chelsea game. I honestly do. I honestly thought for the first time we were actually looking forward, whereas before we were always thinking we need those two to play. But now after Chelsea, maybe we're just looking forward a little bit. And you know, with Ozil, he hasn't exactly contributed much so far this season. So if there is an offer, and maybe the Man United thing comes into that, because we know that if we don't take an offer this January, then actually, potentially he could be lining up in the Manchester derby against Alexis Sanchez next season. I mean, imagine that. So, in a way, maybe taking an offer means it has to be, you've got a bit more of a choice, whether it's an Inter Milan or if a Bayern Munich come in. I think Inter Milan maybe are more likely, but maybe you just keep a little bit more control there, because I can't see Man United's paying money for him, but I think they'll take him on a free. You know, Mourinho's obviously is very close with Ozil, and they were very close at Madrid, but at the same time, he always said that, you know, he's surprised he came to England because he is the best number 10 in the world, but the English game is so different. So I'm just not sure if Man United would spend 20, maybe 25 million on him and give him 300k a week, but they may give him 300k a week if they don't have to pay a fee. So potentially listening to offers is a way of us still controlling where he goes.
Interesting you say that, but obviously Ozil can still say, I don't want to go. I'll wait till the summer. Dave, what do you think?
Exactly, yeah. Well, I think I agree with everything Akhil said. I can't see both players being with us to the end of the season. You know, when I say both players, I mean Alexis and Ozil. And as Akhil said, and I would reiterate, we've proved already we can win without Ozil. I'm not sure we've yet proved we can win without Alexis, and I don't think we can win without both of them on a consistent basis. And of the two, without a shadow of a doubt, Alexis contributes more for me. I'm not saying he's more talented, but he contributes more to the team performance.
His pros outweighs his cons as far as you're concerned, then.
Absolutely, and also I think the other thing is, I personally, and I'll be slammed for this, but I'm more excited about, you know, after the international break, that Welbeck's going to be fit again than I am whether Ozil's back in the side. We can win without Ozil, and to me, there was I said this before, there were too many people in the club or close to the club who were feeding information in the summer, including the player himself, how much he loved the club and how he was going to sign the contract. Some people were saying he literally was going to be signed that week. I was personally told that myself. That looks like a massive smokescreen now. With Alexis, it was never hidden. You know, we knew where Alexis stood. Yeah. He said he wanted to go. Everyone knew he wanted to go. Ozil was, I love Arsenal. Well, I'm sorry. I can't be bothered with it. And
you cynic.
Sell him. No, sell him.
The only
social media game, and that's fine. Don't care.
Go on, Ax. You was going to say.
I mean, the only thing to add there is that sort of dressing room morale is massive, and you know, I agree with Dave on the pitch that Alexis just gives you more of a contribution. But I do worry as the season goes on, what will the dressing room morale be like with Alexis Sanchez there? With Mesut, I think it's a little bit more. I think he's integrated himself better in the team. He gets on with everyone. Alexis is a little bit of a loner. And you just think come sort of February, March, when, you're at a time where potentially you're fourth, you're fifth. I mean, that's probably the best we can hope for now at Arsenal, at least this season. You know, players that aren't going to be here next season, how much are they really going to put in? You know, is Alexis going to get frustrated at his teammates? Is he going to start, really causing kind of problems because, the way he is? Ozil was probably less likely to do that, but then Ozil's contribution might also disappear. So it's a really tough one, and I would be tempted to just get rid of both of them in January, we finish where we finish, but end of the day, that kind of saga's over because I'm bored by it. I'm truly utterly bored by it.
I'll tell you what strikes me is if we're willing to sell him in January, why don't we sell him in the summer? get some proper money out of him in the summer.
Yeah,
well, because he was making the move, because he was saying to the club he wanted to sign the contract. That's why. And we were foolish enough to believe him.
I'm not sure there was many offers in for him either. I think there's a bit of everything there. I think there is a little bit of players now are advised, that they can get quite a good deal if they leave on a free. And it's, people laughed a little bit, and they thought it was just an excuse. But Arsene Wenger this summer did say he sees more and more players now going on a free, and I think a lot of people just thought he's just saying that because he's got 2 days trying to justify it. But I think there could be some scope in that a little bit actually, because players potentially with such high transfer fees, the way they can get the best deal potentially is to go on a free. So maybe Mesut Ozil and his team did play a bit of a game and hint he was going to stay, which maybe just kind of made Arsenal want to keep him because they thought he would sign, and maybe there was a bit of a game. But at the same time, I'm not sure how many offers were in for Mesut, because I didn't see much in the media about so and so in for Mesut Ozil. Saw the odd, Turkish and maybe China, but there wasn't really much. So I think it was a little bit of both there.
And of course, we have seen we're benefiting from this right now with a player who could be on the left side of our defence or midfield for the next 8 years, as far as I'm concerned, in Sheikh Kolasinac. And he was the best left wing back in Germany last year, and knowing he was on a free from Schalke at the end of the season. So,
yeah,
there's an example of how it didn't affect a player, and we're the beneficiary.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think just to add there as well, there's a lot. I think Arsenal they were trying to put quite a stance on it, and they were trying to be quite defiant about the players not leaving, because we were a selling club when we had Van Persie, Nasri, Fabregas. We sort of got over it a little bit. We didn't lose. Bakary Sagna was the only player who really left us, but he was more near the end of his career. And I just think it was such a delicate situation with the manager, and I just think the club probably felt that if they do sell one or two of them, it's going to blow up a little bit. But I think now they might regret it, and I think even fans are starting to. At the time, I thought keeping them is the best option, but you know what? I think I was wrong, to be fair, and I think maybe the club might just think, you know what? I wish we had, and I wish we'd just taken the stick, because actually, long term, it might have been better.
Okay, all right, cool. Well,
but if we are near the top of the league in January, then obviously, and we haven't been playing Ozil, then the backlash is not going to be from the fan base as strong as it might have been.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Well, F. Carnage, our mate, has said Mesut Ozil has not rejected any contract offer, and discussions are ongoing with the club, keen for him to stay. So we'll see how it all pans out. We've got international break upon us now. Some of our players have got big games. We're talking about Aaron Ramsey at Wales. We're talking about Alexis with Chile, who are looking. Both nations look like they're on the wrong side of the fence at this point. So hopefully nobody else apart from Koscielny and I think it's Ozil come back with any injuries. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you to Dave for coming on, mate. You all right? Thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Good stuff. And Akhil, I'll speak to you in a bit on our second part of the pod, the AST review.
See you then.
Hello, welcome back to part 2 of the Gooner Ramble podcast with your host Giles and regular Akhil. We've got a special guest tonight with us. We've got Nigel Phillips from the AST Executive Board. He sits on that board alongside Akhil. Good evening, Nigel. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Giles.
It was a very interesting event last night at the AST meeting, the first of the season. You spoke about financials, ownership, the Christmas Eve game, among other things. Can you just start, I suppose, by giving us this, just telling us what the snapshot of the AST review of the financial accounts?
Excellent. So the figures, the official figures for the financial year ending 31st of May 2017, so effectively the whole of last season, were announced on Thursday. Just they came out the afternoon of the game away to Bate. So there weren't, there's not a lot of press coverage of them this time round, but there again, the figures are becoming a bit samey, so to speak. The major highlights, the first time that the revenues of the club for the season were over 400 million. It's 424 million pounds, and that broadly comes from three areas: TV, broadcast money, gate receipts through the stadium, and then commercial and retail operations. And just very quick headlines. For the first time ever, the TV money, the broadcast money, was double the gate receipts. And you think the whole of the new stadium project was all about maximising gate receipts and giving yourself a competitive advantage over your competitors. So gate receipts, 100 million. It's been pretty static at that sort of level for several seasons now. But broadcast money, 200 million. So double gate receipts. And then we've got commercial and retail and a little bit of property making up the other 125 million. The commercial, that's the one which really needs the work being done on at the moment. So the two big planks of that are the shirt sponsorship and the shirt manufacturers, so Puma and Emirates. We lag a long way behind quite a few of the other Premier League clubs at the moment. So Manchester United, the big daddy of all the commercial operations, they have £100 million a year advantage over Arsenal in terms of their commercial operations, the revenues from those items, and that's principally because the money we're getting from Puma and from Emirates lag way behind what Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Man United, and close to where Tottenham are. That will change, of course, when the Puma deal comes up at the end of this season. But Emirates is locked in for some time. So some work to be done on the commercials, but everyone knows about that anyway. The other highlight is the cash figure, and everyone always looks at the cash to see what's available, what does it mean for transfers. There's always a big high cash figure because it takes into account season ticket monies received before the 1st of June for the following season. So we take off what's going to be used for running the club. We take off money which is securing the stadium finance, the bonds which were issued to fund the stadium, and we have calculated that net available to spend is about 80 million pounds, and then there was a small surplus over the summer. So we think currently the club have about 90 million pounds of free available to spend cash on transfers and wages.
The standout, so the headline stuff really that stands out to me is the fact that the broadcast money went up from the season before, and that's really looks like the bulk of where the uplift has come from. That's because I suppose, of the Champions League involvement and so on and so forth. Obviously, this season we're not going to have that. Swiss Ramble reckons we're going to be down by about 20 million. I think you guys think we're going to be down between 25 and 30 million on that. It's quite, what stands out to me also is the fact that, as you said, commercial, we're quite flat. We're not really increasing that much. We've increased by about 10 million. And from what I can understand, it's 12Bet and Star Beer of Nigeria are two of the new commercial partners, but we really aren't doing much on that side. There's a fear that we're too dependent on TV money, would you say?
That's going to be the same for everyone. Yes, I mean, it's very close to 50% of revenues. There isn't too much which can be done around match day. Everyone's got their views over how much it costs to go into the stadium. We have that sort of differential between occupied seats and tickets sold, and they talk about tickets sold, and that's still very high. That's close to 60,000 per game of tickets sold, so that's real revenue. But the only controllable area, the scope for growth, is in the commercial, because the TV money is all organised centrally. So that's related to the number of times you appear on TV. Obviously, UEFA, and whether you're in the Champions League or the Europa League, has a big differential. But it is the commercial, Giles, as you say, where really the work needs to be done to catch us up. And we have Tottenham going into a new stadium, Chelsea with plans to develop Stamford Bridge, and that is to narrow the gap on the gate receipts with some of the other clubs. So they're working hard on that, And really, we want to see a lot more progress on the commercial side to potentially jack up the income to, £500 million a season. I mean, it's a phenomenal amount of money, but United are over 500 million already, and then it will come down to how you actually spend that money. We haven't talked about wages at the moment and Champions League bonuses, but you're exactly right, Giles. It's the commercial income which where we're lagging behind at the moment.
You said the Puma deal's coming up for expiry next year. Is that 2018? Is that right? Next summer?
I believe so. Correct. Yeah.
Any news on any sort of? Are we going to renew? Are we looking at new partners? Do you know anything about that?
Well, just to put it into context, we're getting about £35 million a season from Puma. The current run rate for a top team from their shirt manufacturer is about £75 million. So Chelsea getting £75 million from their kit manufacturer. So a lot to be done. And then you've also got those issues about, you see everyone's got patches on their
shirt
their arm, on the shirt sleeves, which I don't think that's Puma not allowing us to do that. I believe it's Emirates, but that's another £5 million a season, which we're foregoing. It's effectively free money, but for some reason we're not able to access that.
And the Emirates shirt sponsorship deal's coming up for expiry in 2019, if I'm correct. Again, any news about whether are we going to renew it, or are we looking at new commercial shirt sponsorship partners? Because as you say, we're tied in with so we can't get the 5 or 10 million that other clubs are getting for the shirt sleeve thing. So, I mean, are you aware of anything going on in that department?
Well, the real issue there is these renewals are coming up, and they're lined up 12, 18 months in advance. And if you want to go and get your top dollar from a decent sponsor, you've got to be playing in the highest competitions. So one season out of the Champions League is not good for that. If we had 2 seasons out of that, then there's real dilution in terms of what you can potentially go and say, because it's about exposure, and Europa League is a very different competition. So we know we're going to lose out in terms of gate receipts from that. Season ticket prices are down 11% this year because of the difference between Champions League and Europa League. We'll get a smaller allocation from UEFA from money from the TV pool. That's very different. And now it will be impacting on these future sponsorships unless we can get back in there. But to answer your question about who we're going with, I mean, it could be anyone. There will be a handful of names, and I'm sure those discussions are going on at the moment to see where they're going to be.
And of course, with our 2 top players looking likely to leave, that won't help things neither in terms of exposure and attraction as well.
Well, it sounds like they didn't turn up to the recent corporate or
events,
media day anyway. So maybe they're on a sort of on a go slow on that thing anyway. But sponsorship deals, certainly with the overseas reach, are tied up with key names. So you see some of the transactions which are happening, player transactions, with United, with PSG. Yes, they're getting good players, but there are other reasons, and it's not about selling shirts. There's other reasons. The whole Pogba thing and his emoji and all the rest of it.
Yeah, they're a brand.
They didn't care. They didn't care what they had to pay the agent for it, because it's a 4 or 5 year contract, and it's about making your whole thing bigger, and it's about international sales. So it's a different quantum, I'm afraid.
Indeed. All right. Akhil, I'm going to bring you in, and yourself, Nigel. We also spoke about...
I was making a cuppa there. I just put my feet up.
That was very interesting stuff, I love,
Yeah. Well, I've heard it twice now, so...
We spoke a lot about the ownership thing. Obviously, we've heard that, there was rumours that Kroenke was to make a bid. Amy Lawrence has tonight, or today, now said that bid has been made. Obviously, Arsblog, Miles Palmer and Kevin Gooner fan had already said that they'd heard sources say that the bid had already been made. Why is it such big news, such headline news? Why is it so critical that we do not become the plaything of one single owner?
Well, it ultimately changes everything at Arsenal Football Club. You know, Arsenal, as we know it, has been a club of tradition and class, and a single owner, no matter who it would be, even if it was Usmanov buying Stan Kroenke shares, or if it's Kroenke buying Stan shares, it does change things. It makes the club a lot less transparent. For example, you know, the lack of engagement that exists, it could be actually zero. You remove the AGM because you won't have that anymore, because there won't be any other shareholders, because of course if someone owns 97% of a company, they can squeeze the other sort of shareholders out. They would have to pay a fair price. But I don't think that would really bother Stan Kroenke, because, you know, you don't have to, you just have to be at those AGMs to see how much he dislikes them and dislikes kind of talking in them as well. And then it's kind of just, you know, you can do so much more. You can load debt onto the club like the Glazers have done. You can potentially take dividends out. So obviously to date, Stan Kroenke's taken $6 million for his company on those consultancy fees that no one really knows what they were there for. But the chairman thought it was a good idea to pay him for them. But you could see a lot more of that, and in a way, those kind of consultancy fees was a way of kind of hiding it a little bit. I'm sure there was a little bit of a process there, so no one could really stop it. But I mean, if Stan Kroenke owns the club, then there's absolutely no one to stop it. So at the moment, you know, if there was a special resolution made in terms of, okay, we're going to take, if Stan Kroenke today turns around and says we're going to take dividends and there's a resolution, Usmanov owning 30% can still stop that, which is why it's probably never happened. It may still never happen. You don't know, but the option is there.
The technical issue, Giles, is that as soon as you own over 75% of a club, then you can, of a company, sorry, you can pass any special resolution you want. At the moment, with Kroenke having 67% and Usmanov having 30%, to a certain extent, it's about keeping someone else honest. So when Akhil talks about loading debt onto the club, changing its registration, delisting it from the stock market, squeezing out the small shareholders, at the moment you would need a special resolution to do those, and that needs 75%, and that means that Usmanov would have to vote for those things to happen. In the second year that the Kroenke advisory fee was taken, my understanding is it was the first time that the Usmanov 30% did not vote in any of the ordinary resolutions in the annual general meeting. They just abstained from them. That was their sort of message to say, we don't think this is a good idea. So to end up in a single person's hands leaves us all totally powerless at the whim of that owner to do what they like. And it's a very worrying prospect, I'm afraid.
And yeah, and it's probably more worrying because of the type of owner he is, or at least the type of owner we kind of think he is. You know, he comes to maybe 6 or 7 games a season. When he talks about the game, he doesn't quite come across very passionate or very even knowledgeable about kind of our game here, and I think that's the most worrying thing. I don't think it's ever good for our club to have a single owner, even if it's someone very involved, very passionate, because you just don't know what the future holds. But to have someone who has interests in other countries, in other sports where he's potentially more passionate, I probably could guess his kind of priorities, and I don't think Arsenal Football Club will be very high in it.
The most important thing, Giles, in my view, from an owner, and whether they are distant and passive or whether they're local and active, and I would call Abramovich local and active, is that they have the right structures and the right people in place. So I think it's perfectly fine for Kroenke to own the club if you have a board of directors fit for purpose, if you have an executive with powers to do things, and then if you have the right football structure. You don't necessarily need your owner in the dressing room picking players and doing all the rest of it if you've got other effective people doing that. And that's where you've got to look at Arsenal's sort of senior management and executive to say, are they all doing what they're expecting to do? And the classic example is the renewal of the manager's contract this summer, which was agreed between the manager and the owner. The board didn't really have a say in that, and that tells you a lot about what could potentially happen in the future with that single ownership.
Glyn said yesterday, Alicia Robinson's got £600 million doing nothing. He's got no place on the board, does nothing. He attends, I think you said, he attends more Everton games than he does Arsenal games. Jeremy Wilson also mentioned that what was interesting was that usually Usmanov's Red and White Holdings issue a statement saying we are in it for the long term. We have no, we have no plans to sell our shares, but that was conspicuously absent this time around. So, would you say that there's a real chance that he's considering selling up?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. He's been there since he bought David Dean shares in 2007, I think it was. So he's been there for a decade. I mean, David Dean had just under 10%, so that's when Usmanov came on board. And the real issue is that his long-term business associate Fahad Moshiri now has 50% and effectively control at Everton, is hands-on, and it would be a lot easier and probably more enjoyable for Usmanov to be involved in a club where he can have some presence, he can have some influence, direction, whatever. And I think he's just realised that having made a couple of tentative bids for the Kroenke 67%, last one in May, and there was a previous one before. Now, these are private bids, but they've been well written up. He's probably got to the stage where he realises that Kroenke's never going to sell to him. The 500 or 600 million he'll get for his Arsenal stake is immaterial to him in terms of his wealth, and whether it would change his life or anything, it certainly wouldn't. But it's all about the visibility and going and having a bit of involvement with a club. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's got to the end of his time with Arsenal, if he can extract a decent figure. The figure they're talking about would equate to £28,000 a share, which is £6,000 or £7,000 more than they've traded at all. But the figure's almost sort of immaterial. But it's about the influence, and it's about being involved in a club and feeling as though you probably wanted somewhere. And clearly, there's a lot of work and a lot of scope to do things at Everton.
Just to add there, I mean, we spoke to a football lawyer about 18 months ago at the AST who's worked with Usmanov's team and knows the team well. And 18 months ago, he was very sure that Usmanov wouldn't sell and would kind of, I think the words he used were he would probably die with these shares, because it's kind of, he's proud to have them a little bit, and even if he isn't influential. But then that was before his good mate Fahad Moshiri took over at Everton, and you know how it is, when you're happy, but then you see your mate doing something and you think, oh, actually I want a piece of that, and your mate's kind of ringing you probably daily and saying, get involved, get involved here, we can have so much fun here. Because that's ultimately what it is for Moshiri, and it would be for Usmanov too over there. So I got to say, 18 months ago, I was fairly comfortable that he wouldn't sell. But now, I mean, what Jeremy said was spot on, and I did some research on this last night, actually, after he said that every time there has been even a rumour of some sort of a takeover, or even before that, hostile takeovers, or any kind of shares being kind of changing hands, there's always has been some sort of a PR kind of announcement from Usmanov, and there hasn't really been this time. And Jeremy again last night mentioned about normally before the AGM you always get Usmanov just putting something out there to remind people he's here, to remind people like us, I guess, to that he's here, and just to put a bit of pressure on Stan Kroenke before the AGM. But it does seem like perhaps his interest has gone a little bit. I'm not sure if Nigel knows what Usmanov's, if he's going to be voting this year or not, but it does seem to me that his interest has slightly decreased, because I think he's probably now just given up a little bit. He's probably just, he probably knows that Stan Kroenke isn't going anywhere. So we know Stan Kroenke's here for the long term because of all the overseas TV opportunities and all that sort of kind of stuff he can see. Maybe Usmanov has just thought, well, actually, what's the point, kind of thing. And as the guys yesterday mentioned, I mean, it's not about the money. The money to him, 500-600 million, is absolutely nothing. But while he's got 30% of Arsenal, he can't own anything. Well, he can't own anything more than 10% of another club, which pretty much means his 30% Arsenal is stopping him owning another football club. And it's pointless for him to go down to 10% at Arsenal, because that won't mean anything. So it's either keep the shares and don't own another club, or sell the shares and own another club and be a lot more involved. So, that's kind of the situation he's in.
What's interesting?
I think Akhil's spot on. It's about Mashiri on the phone to him saying, "Come on in, the water's lovely, we'll have a bit of fun," etc., etc. I mean, that's without even discussing the Newcastle situation, and I mean, he will get more money for his Arsenal stake than Newcastle currently up for sale. But Mashiri's very hands-on. I've met Fayed on numerous occasions, and he'll be thinking a lot about the football club. So I don't really think they'd entertain another club in their portfolio. So it is looking as if he could be on the way to his exit from Arsenal.
What's interesting is one of his companies already ploughed 5 or 10 million into Finch Farm. Is that right? Yeah, the training ground at Everton. And it was also announced last week that both Mashiri and Usmanov are putting on some sort of theatre production or show with Bill Kenwright or something like that. So there's all these sort of like little links happening all over the place. Going back to Amy Lawrence's piece today, I don't know if you guys saw it, but she mentioned that there's a consortium of long-standing Arsenal supporters who have found heavyweight financial backing. They've tried to throw their hat into the ring a few times. They've tried to inquire about buying Kroenke shares and Usmanov shares. Akhil, do you know anything about this Arsenal, well, I'd call them red and white knights, let's say?
Not really. But I mean, what I would say is there's probably a lot of very rich people out there that would love to get their hands on Arsenal Football Club. But I think the main point is Stan Kroenke doesn't look like he's going to sell. I mean, when Usmanov put a bit of pressure on him, he didn't budge once. And I just think that it may well be true, it may not be true, but it's kind of irrelevant. It's just that little side story that actually has no relevance on the story at all. Nigel may have more to add.
Nigel?
It's people realising that the door is closing and becoming a little bit frustrated, desperate, worried, or whatever, and a group of people, and the money we're talking about is substantial, so the money behind this would have to come from overseas, probably a sort of a sovereign wealth fund type of things,
or a Nigerian cement magnate, maybe.
Well, I don't think that's where it is. It's more Middle East, Middle East based.
Yeah.
And there have been discussions, and as Akhil says, the Kroenke door is pretty shut. And now I know that there's sort of issues between Usmanov and Kroenke, and it's thawed a little bit compared to what it was, but I think they've both been eyeing each other up and realised that there's no further place that they can go because Usmanov can't buy Kroenke. So this consortium are thinking, is there a third way? Is there anywhere else which could possibly lever a position? The Usmanov stake is awkward because it's 30%, which is a significant minority stake, but it will give you nothing. It won't give you a seat on the board. It might give you a seat in the director's box, even though you're not a director, which eventually Usmanov has got. But it's effectively a dead stake, because the way Kroenke has behaved towards that 30% is it doesn't make it attractive to anyone. So you've got to look at the 67% stake, and the money you're talking about. It's sort of $2 billion to buy the whole thing. It's huge sums of money now.
Interesting. Let's move on to TV money, the TV rights.
Hold on, before we finish, Giles, I think there's a good piece by Amy. There's a piece by Jeremy Wilson. The bloggers are doing it as well. I feel very concerned that we're just going to sleepwalk into a situation which no one can see the positive side to. I don't know what people should be doing, but this is very real, and somehow we need to get mobilised to say this is not in the best interest of the club. The annual general meeting is going to happen on the 26th of October, on a Thursday morning. So it's still 3 weeks away. It might have all happened by then, but if it hasn't happened by then, that is the ideal opportunity, because there was plenty of journos there, to put questions to the board to say, hypothetically speaking, do you think Arsenal being owned by one single person is a good idea? Chips Keswick, chairman. Ivan Gazidis, chief executive. Bearing in mind that Kroenke is probably going to be there and he's paying Ivan's salary, etc. But we need as much noise about this. We've got an international break, and then there's 2 games before the AGM. But we mustn't go to sleep on this, because this is absolutely serious.
Before I move on, then, you've said that it's anyone that wants to buy Usmanov's stake is basically putting away dead money. The only thing they're doing really is making sure that someone's held accountable. In terms of, they're being on the stock market, we have access to financial reports. But what's in it for them then? What is in it? It's only out of principle. You're doing it out of principle because you want things to be transparent, but you're throwing away good money if Kroenke is not prepared to sell.
What's in it for them is, I was just going to say, they would have to be very rich, and they would have to really love Arsenal Football Club.
But they're businessmen, aren't they? Yeah, exactly.
There's not much else. All right, they'll probably, the shares will grow and the price will grow, so eventually they'll be worth more than they are now. But ultimately, you're only doing it to protect Arsenal Football Club, and that's quite for that much money, that's quite a big, it's a big jump, and it's a big thing to do, really.
But Charles, that's the challenge to the Arsenal consortium, the very rich fans, etc. Right, if you love the club so much, take out that Usmanov stake and keep an element of mutual ownership in the club. You know it's not going to get you on the board. You know it's not going to give you influence. It's not going to direct strategy or whatever, but it will keep the club in 2 hands. Two owners. So we are in this sort of situation where we are now, where we do have this transparency, we do have this sort of right to challenge, we do have the annual general meeting and those things. They might be small issues, but with Arsenal there's so much media interest. We do have the opportunity and we've got influential bloggers and great journos and all the rest of it. We've got that opportunity to hold people to account. And that Kroenke $3 million advisory fee, as Akhil said, for really unknown services, and $3 million is more than take Ivan's salary out of it, is more than the head of commercial, the head of communications, the head of HR, and the head of legal get paid collectively in a year. So you're paying advisory fees to a firm for what you don't really know, more than 4 senior people are earning for doing a full-time job at Arsenal, which is hard to comprehend. So that happened twice. Big media storm whipped up by supporters trust and journos and bloggers and whatever. And the third year, it was just too much aggro. The figure was immaterial, but people made it clear that that's not the way to do it. You're owning the club, not to take the money out of it, but to support the club. So those type of things would be gone. So whether the group of Arsenal consortium investors or whatever would ever consider doing something with Usmanov, knowing it's not going to get them on the board or ownership. I really don't know, but that's a challenge we should be putting out to those people as well.
I guess the only thing for them is if they do that, and if they are really in it for the long term, then one day, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 15 years, that the Kroenkes, because it might be over to Josh by then, might actually think, you know what, if we can't take this special resolution, if we can't take dividends, we can't put debt on the club, then you never know. Things could change, broadcasting, it could crash and things could change. But as soon as, if he does get that extra 30%, then you sort of know that that's kind of it. Because from when Stan goes, Josh will probably take over, and then that's another, 50, 60, 70, and it could be the Kroenke family for years to come.
But that's assuming that the philosophy of Stan, who's now 70, is followed by his son in terms of I'm a buyer, I'm an accumulator, I'm never a seller. I mean, Josh is, I don't know, is he 30, early 30s? It's a whole different outlook. So it's not to say he's going to inherit all his father's traits. We've been talking about the ownership issue now for a decade.
Yeah. But then
time runs on.
Yeah. But then if Kroenke does get the extra 30%, then Josh, if Josh can take dividends out of the club, then it doesn't matter what his philosophy is. If he's getting kind of money out of it, then why would you want to, why would you want to sell? It's more about if Usmanov's stuck in there, or someone else bought Usmanov shares who's stuck in there, then potentially Josh could just think, what is the point? We're not actually getting anything out of this. But yeah, we're just speculating really.
And the other side to this, the other flip side to this is if you're a potential buyer, you really want to deal with one seller rather than number of sellers. So if the Kroenkes decided we want to sell, that you've got one party to deal with, not I've got to make an offer for this party, I've got to make another offer for another party. So who knows what the future might bring. The foreign TV money, that's the TV, the next round of TV money that's coming on next year with the auction. That's another. It's been another quite hotly spoken about topic last night. Nigel, where are we with this? I mean, it seems as though from what you guys were saying is that in terms of the next round of auctions, that Sky don't really want to take on much more than their current market share. I think it's quite obvious that they've loaded the consumer with quite a lot. They've overcharged the consumer. They feel they may have overpaid for their current share. Obviously, BT have eaten into that. We've got these new potential bidders, circling. Where do you see that going in terms of the TV bids?
The real growth in this is the overseas rights, which is so take out of what's shown in the UK market as the Sky and the BT. It's the international packages, and they sell packages to all around the world, as you know, and they're getting good growth in Asia. Africa is still pretty much untapped. That's 1 billion people. India is pretty much untapped. So we're going to continue to see substantial growth on the international side, and it won't be long before the money coming in from the international exceeds what's in the UK, which is quite a feat to imagine. But this is the long haul. It's the sort of thing that Kroenke sees. The pie will continue to get bigger, and that's why you need players like Pogba in the Premier League, and why you need all the international stars to be there, because the Premier League still sells. The overseas TV money is divided equally between all 20 clubs in the Prem. Everyone gets 5% of it, and that now is coming under pressure because, surprise, surprise, the big 6 clubs
breakaway. Yeah,
it's not necessarily breakaway. They're just saying,
bigger slice of the pie.
It's Man United, Liverpool, which sells over in Malaysia at whatever time. It's not Huddersfield versus Brighton. So it needs Premier League voting when it was set up. it needs 14-6 would carry something. But at the moment, the 6 is the minority. So there's no way that 6 are ever going to get to the 14, which they would need to be able to vote something through. So I don't know how much pressure they're going to put on the Premier League owners and structures to say, come on, the big boys need more. Do they really need more? Well, Of course, if you think you're generating, you're going to get it. But you think there's an imbalance in the Premier League at the moment. If the overseas TV rights are sliced up differently, then I'm not saying we're going to get into the Spain situation or the France situation, but that top 6 could break away forever if they're not already.
Yeah. It would be a strange thing to do for people to vote for that, wouldn't it? If you're not in the top 6, because it just you're pretty much saying you're never going to be in the top 6 if you kind of vote for it. So it is a strange one, but. Yeah.
Is the potential danger coming from the Euro Super League, where the big European clubs decide to break away, and TV rights, the money on the table for those rights would be astronomical rather than your Premier League rights? Isn't that really where the big money is?
I mean, that's been talked for almost decades, and you'd say, well, is the Champions League that thing anyway? To win the Champions League, it's 15 games, I think. To win the Europa League, it's 17 games. So 17 games is half the season. I know the Europa League isn't quite, what the Champions League are, but you look at the teams in the Champions League, you say there's 15 games to get to there. When it gets to the round of 16, you've sort of got the top teams in Europe there. When you get the quarterfinals, and it comes down. So there's still a lot of attraction for local derbies in your domestic league. The pyramid in the UK, in England, is fantastic. So you can get Burton in the Championship. You've got Huddersfield in the Prem. I think we've now had, is it 53 different clubs in the Prem in this 25, 26 seasons? Something like that. It's a huge meritocracy. So I'm not really a buyer of the European Super League to take clubs out of your national leagues. Speaking from an English point of view, I don't know what they would say in France, Italy, and Germany
or Catalan.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Going to declare independence later this week. Is that right?
Barcelona, Rangers, and Celtic would be the 3 teams in that league, wouldn't it? It would just be them playing each other.
Could you imagine if they declare themselves independent? Then the Spanish league could potentially say, you're not playing in a Spanish league.
They'll be very brave.
They'll be refugees of Europe, wouldn't they? I'm sure they have loads of takers, wouldn't they? They'd have takers from other leagues, I'm sure. Specifically, France is over the border, isn't it? They could do with a...
Barca is obviously sympathetic towards the vote, but I know we've got Welsh clubs playing in the English league, but we're not overly keen on Scottish clubs coming down to the Prem. So could you see a situation where the Spanish league say, well, you're a separate country, that's what you want, you better go and play in your own country? Barca playing Espanyol 20 times a season.
Indeed. Just quickly before we move on to the Liverpool Arsenal game on Christmas Eve, 22 extra games being being broadcast next season. Is that right, Nigel? Am I right? That's more because of the Asian market, and I suppose there'll be more 11 a.m. 12 midday games to cater for the Asian market. So that's something we've got to watch out for. Moving on to the big thing, which is the Liverpool-Arsenal game. Or Arsenal-Liverpool game. What's the situation at the moment? Is it likely to go ahead on Christmas Eve, Axe?
Well, I mean, we all know we all know Sky get, 3 games a weekend. One's normally a Sunday 4:00, which is their big game worth about 14 million to them. Which for them it's their category A, it's their number one, it's the one everyone watches. They wanted one of the games from that games week to be in that slot. It looks like they've chosen Arsenal versus Liverpool. And then it's kind of over to kind of everyone else, it's over to the authorities, to the police. I think probably the way I look at it, the clubs probably have the least amount of say. in terms of actual, can they play or can they not play? I mean, where the clubs can get involved, and obviously we've seen that a little bit in the media, is if, for example, they can't get enough stewards, and that's obviously been a story that Arsenal potentially are saying that there could be a safety reason why the game can't be, an issue why the game can't be played, because, and then, you got to think of that kind of logically, that there are stewards who potentially won't be able to get home, potentially will have to leave their families on Christmas Eve. You've got to think that a lot of these stewards do the job sort of part-time. A lot of them have 9 to 5s. They just do a bit of stewarding because either they like to watch a bit of Arsenal play, or they do it for the extra cash. But at the same time, it's probably a majority of them, it's not their big career. So a lot of them, I think, would just think, I can't really be bothered to fight the transport problems and fight the chaos to get to the Emirates on Christmas Eve at 4:00. So I think that could be a genuine problem. Of course, Sky could then say, okay, we'll play the game earlier. Which may help transport a little bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, Liverpool fans will still be travelling back. The railway does tend to shut down Christmas Eve quite early, because obviously with the railway, Christmas Day is the only day in the year where there's no trains. So large scale engineering projects are often done, which normally do start on Christmas Eve. So they could even start on the day before, the 23rd. So you will have problems for away fans, certainly, and that's why SOS of Spirit Shankly have released a statement that has been signed by various other supporter clubs, including the AST, because their fans can't really get home. Arsenal have fans that come from all over the country as well, and they would struggle. So for the football fan, it's not ideal. It's not great. It's not great for police as well. You think of London on Christmas Eve, from my background on nightclub promoting, it's a busy day. It's a busy evening, and police in London are stretched anyway. You've got anti-terror police. You've got all sorts. So it is a problem. But from Sky's point of view, they pay a lot of money for football. It's worth a lot of money for them. So they kind of want it to happen. So what will happen, I think most people are betting on a compromise, a slightly earlier game. But I actually have a feeling that it might not happen on Christmas Eve, purely because the police and the safety aspects of it, which obviously is vital, may just take over a little bit, and because of that, the game might not be allowed to be played. But obviously, I hope that the game isn't played. I mean, we've been talking to fans at the AST. We did a little poll on it, and a lot of people will struggle to get there. Some people may still try and get there, but they might not be able to. And that's the same for stewards. Stewards might say, they'll work, but then on the day something could happen with transport and they might not be able to get there. So I hope the authorities, I hope Sky, I hope the two clubs do the sensible thing and think about kind of fans, because there's not many people who win out of this. The people maybe in pubs on Christmas Eve win. I mean, potentially, I said it yesterday at the meeting, but actually the players probably win because they'll actually get Christmas Day off for the first time ever. So, but apart from that, there isn't much. So let's hope the sensible thing is done and the game is not played on Christmas Eve.
Nigel, the Premier League fixtures over the weekend come out around a week's time, maybe. Is that right? In a week's time, we'll know for sure.
Yeah,
it's around the 12th. Yeah.
The 12th, yeah. So if the game is to be played on that day, surely 2:00 could be a compromisable time, I suppose, because if you're playing it at 4 p.m, obviously train shut down, then I suppose will the clubs have to foot the bill in terms of putting on extra coaches to get the fans back up to Merseyside? Where do you feel this was going to go? Do you agree with Akhil that you feel that the Premier League may relent and then put it back on the 23rd, or if not, do you think then they can find a more amenable time?
I think this is almost one of these watershed moments for fan club league engagement. So there was big engagement around the away ticket pricing, 20s plenty. It ended up at £30 an away ticket across the board, and that had two goes. The clubs did not want to vote for that, and then the league put pressure on the clubs to say, come on, you've got so much extra TV money coming in, there's only 3,000 away fans there, it's the right thing to do. There was a very powerful protest at Liverpool with a fan walkout in the Sunderland game, and that wasn't to do with the away tickets, it was to do with the pricing of their new stand and everything. And I honestly think this is a chance for, you can't promise a boycott and say it's going to happen, but let's say the game goes ahead and the stadium is half full. First of all, it's not a great TV spectacle. And secondly, fans eventually, collectively, have got to show their clubs or the league that they mustn't be taken for granted. Because part of the attraction, we're talking about the overseas TV rights, it's about watching full stadiums. It's about hopefully seeing passionate fans. That's why the Cologne thing was, such a almost refreshing experience to see so many people and the youth of the people, etc. So I'm really hoping that enough messages are put into the Premier League for them to take the right decision. There's enough other games on TV. I appreciate it's a great time to be showing it on the TV, but without fans, it's not a TV spectacle. So I hope common sense prevails and it stays on the 23rd.
Just before we shut down, I know that it was this. I think Tim Payton said last night that there was a Leeds Man United game sometime in the early 90s before the Premier League came in. So we're not setting a precedent. But if this game does go ahead on the 24th,
I think there was a game in 95 actually. I had a look after. I think there was one in 95, but literally there's been one in the Premier League era.
So you'd imagine if they get their way, if Sky get their way, and this game goes ahead on the 24th at say 4:00 on Christmas Eve, you would imagine that next season they might think, well, we've done it in last season, we can do it again next season. And I think somebody actually said, although Spirit of Shankly may mobilise fans to stay away, the hardcore support to stay away still doesn't mean it still could mean that your day trippers, your other fans that don't get to go to big games as this will take up the
spot on. I mean, Liverpool are a big club, there's no doubting that, and they'll have a lot of fans in London and around London who probably will never get the chance to go to an away game. So I have no doubt that away end will be full, and that's probably the frustration for the Spirit of Shankly group, because they'll stay away. The hardcore may stay away, but the TV companies, when they sort of put their cameras into the away end, it will be full. So that is a frustration for them, and I kind of see that. I think what my prediction there would be, the Spirit of Shankly group will try and get regulars to buy their tickets. Obviously, they're only £30. They're not £64 like they were the season before last, and just kind of sit on their tickets and not sell them on. I think that's the only way they can do it. Which is, it's an expensive way to do it, but if it sends a message, then
and same with Arsenal fans, I suppose.
A little bit. It's slightly to a lesser extent there, really, because you're not going to find sort of 45,000 day trippers and tourists on Christmas Eve, because at Arsenal, even if you're a day tripper or don't get to many games, you still can get to quite a few. So I think it's a little bit different at Arsenal, because if you can't go then, you can probably go a couple of weeks later. The FA Cup will start up. There'll be opportunities, but for Liverpool fans potentially in London who just have no physical access, this might be the only chance for them.
And don't forget, the vast majority of tickets at Arsenal are sold on season ticket basis anyway. So it would only go to ticket exchange if it was fully sold out.
Exactly.
I think match by match, they have 8,000 or 9,000 to shift.
Yeah, it's maybe just over that. But I mean, exactly. I think Nigel's spot on there that the game has to be sold out before ticket exchange comes into play. So if the game's not sold out, then ticket exchange won't come into play, which means it could actually be a half-empty stadium.
Interesting. Okay, I think it's a good point to wrap it up. Hopefully, things get sorted. I want to thank Nigel for coming on tonight. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Nigel.
Thanks, Giles. No, always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And also, Akhil, thank you very much, mate.
No problem at all.
All right. So before we go, Akhil, if somebody wanted to place a bet, on an Arsenal player in an international week, who would the best place to go?
Well, we have a special offer for them, Giles, don't we?
Do we now?
We do. We've been backed for the season by a new sporting app called Bookie. That's BOOKEE. And if you sign up, register, use the promo code Ramble, deposit and bet £10, you get a free £10 bet. So, not only are we giving you quality content in terms of a podcast, we're also giving you the chance to gamble your life away. Aren't we nice?
We better say that slogan, that disclaimer, isn't it? Bad bet
Please
or
bet
whatever.
responsibly.
Please bet responsibly.
Over 18s only. Thank you.
And once it's not fun, stop or something like that. All right, great stuff. Akhil, why should people join the AST?
Firstly, it's only £2 a month. You get a very small voice, and we're not going to pretend it's a big voice, but we like to think we make a very, very small difference. That 3 million consultancy fees, when I say 3, because obviously it took 3 million 2 years. We kept banging on about it. We were kind of that annoying little voice that just kept coming at every opportunity we got. And of course we got that because we asked our members, do you want us to do this? And our members said yes. So, by joining the AST, we like to listen to views. We send out regular surveys. We often have meetings, Giles, as you turned up last night. We just hopefully get a little bit more insight. At the moment we're talking to members about kind of how to steer the AGM. We have a survey going out this week about ownership and where we stand, which we'll then get the results to, and we'll obviously then write our AGM questions. For example, we know Christmas Eve football isn't a good idea because our members have told us. So without our members, it's very hard to kind of have that direction. So, joining the AST just means you're talking to like-minded people about football, about the club we love, and hopefully, you learn a bit, we all learn a bit, and we kind of we battle the times together.
Nigel, why are such support groups like AST so important, and what is the AST trying to achieve?
It's the collective voice, which at this stage is super important. So there's a load of social media around Arsenal. There's a load of big characters who create the noise, the agenda or whatever. But when it actually comes down to it, it's by having a group of people together who can say, this is representing not just a high profile blogger, media person or whatever, but we've got a membership and this is the majority view. So when we attend the AST along with a lot of other fan groups and representatives from different areas of the club attend the fans forum, we get a point across. The annual general meeting is absolutely key, and it's going to be super key this year as well. And it's to try and show a balanced approach to the club, to say this is a wide spectrum of people. It might be a relatively small number, but it's not just one or two media profile blogging type of people. You look at some of the meetings we go to, there's all sorts of ages and characters there, and it's trying to get that broad view, holding the club to account, being a friendly friend, a critical friend, is the main mantra of the club. It was about widening ownership, which Fanshare was about, and those things have sort of come and gone, unfortunately. But it's a collective body, and it's sharing views and representing to the club what the people's views are, ideally.
Great stuff. Akhil, how do people join?
Well, you can just go to our website. That's www.arsenaltrust.org, and you'll get a membership form there. It is, as I said, it's about £2 a month, £24 a year. You can obviously set up a standing order, pay by PayPal, whatever you want. And then you can also follow us on Twitter. I think it's AST_Arsenal. I think. I feel like a bit of a promoter here. I've just promoted a bookie. I've promoted a supporters trust. Anything else I've forgotten to promote?
Me?
Well, that'll take a lot of work. I don't think I have the time anymore.
All right, great stuff. So that's been a Gooner Ramble podcast. I've been your host, Giles. Thank you for listening, and up your Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.